When you hear the word drag, there's really only one name that instantly pops into everyone's head, right? RuPaul. But, beyond all the glitter and the catchphrases, who is the person that took this underground art form and just blew it up into a global empire?
I mean, to say he's successful is a massive understatement. Fortune magazine didn't mince words. They flat out called him easily the world's most famous drag queen, and that really says it all about his incredible reach. And if you need a number to back that up, here it is. 14. That's how many Primetime Emmy Awards RuPaul has personally won. This doesn't just make him the most awarded host in his category, it makes him the most awarded person of color in the entire history of the Emmys. Just let that sink in.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did this happen? How did a self-described poor black queer kid from what he himself calls a broken home climb his way to becoming a true global icon? Well, let's get into it. To really understand the empire, we have to go all the way back. Back before the fame, before the money, back to his underground beginnings. So, RuPaul was born in San Diego back in 1960, and his childhood was anything but glamorous. He grew up poor, his parents divorced when he was just 7, and he was raised by a mother he's described as volatile, while his father was pretty much out of the picture. And, this difficult childhood was also shaped by some pretty deep trauma. He talks about this one specific scarring incident where his mother tried to set his father's car on fire after finding out about an affair. RuPaul called this a pivotal moment that was so intense it actually caused him to dissociate from his own body. After he moved to Atlanta to study performing arts, the hustle really began. And believe me, this was no overnight success. The 80s were just this whirlwind of public access TV, low-budget indie films, and even gigs as a backup singer. A little fun fact, you can actually spot him as an extra in that iconic Love Shack music video. By the early 90s, he'd finally started to make a real name for himself in the New York City club scene. And all that grinding, all that hustling in the clubs, it was all leading up to this one moment. The moment that would change everything and launch him into the mainstream. And here it is, Supermodel, You Better Work. In 1993, this track dropped and it was an absolute game changer. I mean, it wasn't just some club hit, it actually broke into the Billboard Hot 100. For a drag artist at that time, that was huge. So how did a club song become this massive cultural moment? Simple. Television. The music video was on heavy rotation on MTV. And suddenly, RuPaul was on major talk shows like the Arsenio Hall show. This literally took drag culture out of the underground clubs and beamed it directly into living rooms all across America. And riding that massive wave of fame, RuPaul just started breaking barriers left and right. In 1994, he becomes the spokesperson for MAC Cosmetics, the first drag queen ever to land a major cosmetics campaign. Then, just 2 years later, he gets his own talk show on VH1, interviewing A-listers like Cher, Diana Ross, and even Nirvana. But believe it or not, with all of that incredible success, his biggest, most lasting impact was still yet to come. It's time to talk about the empire.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2009. A little reality show with a kind of grainy Vaseline on the lens filter premieres on a pretty niche cable channel called Logo. The show was RuPaul's Drag Race. And at the time, absolutely no one could have predicted what it was about to become.
And this chart just says it all. What started as this one scrappy little show has just exploded. It's now a global franchise with more than 18 seasons in the US, a ton of all-star seasons, and international versions popping up all over the world. The real turning point, though, was when the show jumped from that niche channel Logo to the much bigger VH1. This wasn't just about getting more eyeballs on the show. It was a huge cultural moment. It took queer stories from the margins and plopped them right into the center of mainstream entertainment, totally changing the game for reality TV. But as you can imagine, with that kind of massive influence comes a whole lot of scrutiny. So now let's take a look at the more complicated, more challenging parts of RuPaul's legacy. Yeah, his legacy is really two-sided. On the one hand, you have this undeniable cultural pioneer. He championed queer representation. He's got a Tony Award, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's an icon. But on the other hand, he's faced some pretty significant criticism, often from within the very community he helped bring into the spotlight. So let's get into the specifics of those criticisms. He's been called out for using language that many consider to be transphobic.
Then there was a 2018 interview where he said that women who had transitioned would probably not be allowed on Drag Race. It's important to note, he did later express regret for the hurt those comments caused, and more recently, he's been accused of hypocrisy for allowing fracking on the massive Wyoming ranch he owns with his husband. But even with all the controversy, RuPaul's core philosophy seems to have stayed the same. He's always said that he sees drag as a very, very political act. Why? Because it fundamentally challenges the status quo by messing with our rigid ideas about identity. And that really brings us to our final thought here. RuPaul once said, "Drag says, I'm a shapeshifter. I do whatever the hell I want at any given time." So when you think about his whole journey, from that poor kid in San Diego to this complex global icon, it makes you wonder, in a world that seems to be demanding we all pick a side, pick a fixed identity, what does it truly mean to challenge the status quo today?